Hi, this is Sharon Hannan. I started coaching in Cairns as a young single mother, ventured down to the Gold Coast, started coaching older athletes, high school kids, and then post-secondary kids, and have coached Olympics and World Championships, World Indoor Championships, Commonwealth Youth, Olympic Youth. And today you're going to hear a little bit about that journey, and you're listening to the Physical Performance Show.
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by PhysioCrem and Pogo Physio. I'm Brad Beer, sports physiotherapist and exercise scientist by trade and training, and founder of Pogo Physio. Each week, we'll bring you the latest and greatest information and inspiration designed to help you perform at your physical best. We do this across a range of different episodes: expert editions, featured performers, coaches' corners, and interest editions. And what a great way to kick off with today's Coach's Corner, featuring Sharon Hannan, Australian sprints and hurdles athletics coach and former coach of Sally Pearson, who of course went on to collect Commonwealth, World and Olympic gold medals in the 100-metre hurdles. In this episode, you'll hear Sharon share around her top coaching principles, career's highs, lows, and many learnings, and how it all started so humbly in rural Queensland and culminated in the highest of highs, Olympic gold, with Sally Pearson, who Sharon coached for 14 and a half years from age 12. Sharon is a Level 4 specialist coach for sprints, relays and hurdles, a Level 3 advanced junior coach, and you'll find Sharon on the Gold Coast overseeing the Gold Coast Victory Athletics Club, and her husband, Peter Hannan, also acclaimed track and field coach, on the track working their Aussie athletics and sports credentials coaching services. So get ready with a pen and paper as Sharon Hannan shares on this Coach's Corner. Sharon Hannan, this is a real pleasure for me and something I've been looking forwards to for a long time. I've had you on the must-interview list really since the show started. So we're now 4 years in and we've finally got the opportunity to make it happen. So welcome to the Physical Performance Show.
Thank you. I remember meeting you on a plane from Sydney or somewhere
Melbourne.
Back to the Gold Coast, Melbourne, yeah.
And prior to that, I was attending a physiotherapy event, but prior to that, I used to train at the Griffith Uni track, and yourself and your husband Peter, I'd get our little bands and off we'd go. So, you have had such a distinguished career, and it's one that, like any career, is full of highs, lows and many learnings, and we certainly want to pull some of those learnings from you today. But the backstory, Sharon, I think it's easy for the world to look at you and the accomplishments you've had throughout your coaching career and just think that's the way it's always been. But shall we start there? It hasn't always been that way. You started with as a single mum taking your daughter to athletics, correct?
Yeah. Well, she came home from school with a flyer. I even remember it was an orange flyer, and Mummy, can I join Little Athletics? And so I looked into it, and yep, she joined Mulgrave Little Athletics, which is based in Gordonvale, which used to be a little town south of Cairns. Now it's virtually part of Cairns.
Part of one.
Yeah.
And she, what was her interest in the athletics at that stage?
Everything. She was 9 at that stage, and she just really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. I didn't so much enjoy my first year. I was given a job to do, which I was more than happy to do, but I had to do it every single meet, so I didn't get to follow her around and see what she was doing. And my job was to pull a tape measure through the discus circle and measure the throws for every afternoon of that season. So that wasn't much fun. And, then an opportunity came up to do a coaching course, so I bolted off and did that.
And the calendar year was about what, Sharon, at that point?
This is 1983.
1983. And you did the coaching course. What was the impetus? The fact that you thought you wanted to learn a little bit more and maybe get a different job?
No, it wasn't even that. It was circumstances. The people who ran the club in Gordonville, they owned a sports store. They were a very sporty family, and they wanted to move their tennis sessions, because they ran tennis coaching and tennis competitions, and they wanted to move that to a Sunday morning, and the athletics was on a Sunday morning, so they moved the athletics to a Wednesday afternoon. But I worked for an airline, used to be called Bush Pilots Airways.
Wow.
And then became Air Queensland, and then virtually Qantas Link. And that was at the airport on the north side of Cairns, and so there was no way I could get her to athletics. And a good friend of mine became her sort of daycare mother, and so she took her down for a little while. But there was another couple of families displaced. One family had 5 boys, and the dad was in the Navy, and he was captain of the Flinders, which was a survey vessel. So he was out a lot, and the mum was a teacher at a primary school in Cairns, and she just couldn't do it. And another family with 3 kids as well. So the Navy family made the inquiry from Little Athletics initially about what could we do to start a little athletic centre in Cairns, because there was one on the Tablelands, one at Innisfail, one at Gordonville, and nothing in Cairns itself. Possibly because there was quite a strong, what used to be called then an amateur athletics club, but they weren't catering for the real young kids. So they made the initial inquiries, and then the dad got drafted to Sydney in the Navy, and so I picked up the mantle and started Cairns Little Athletics in 1980. Actually, I started the Cairns Little Athletics in 1983, so I must have started in Gordonville in 82. Yeah, that makes more sense.
And so that was so it was almost out of necessity. You stepped into a role, and really, could you have ever imagined what was in store for you? Beyond that, we're talking obviously Olympic coaching to Olympic, Commonwealth, World Championship medals.
Yeah. Well, nobody in their right mind would have been able to think that far ahead and think that was possible. But I really enjoyed the coaching. We started off, we had 83 kids in our first year in Cairns Little A's. I had a great little committee behind me, no coaches. Another lady came with me to do the coaching course, and she coached for many years up there as well. Then I think the kids really benefited from some actual coaching knowledge, and they did really well in a lot of the competitions, so it was good.
And then, you were established in Cairns for a period, and then met your husband, Peter, and I believe that was one of the key reasons you shifted to the Gold Coast.
Yes, back in the day, Queensland Athletics used to do country coaching clinics, and usually in the mid-year holidays, the June-July holidays. And Queensland Little Athletics also used to do the same. So I'd organised, because I was by then zone coordinator for the whole of the Far North, and I'd organised a clinic to be conducted up in Atherton at the Tablelands Little Athletics, one of their home grounds. And Queensland Athletics had organised a coaching clinic for Cairns amateurs, so for the amateur athletes, the older ones, in Cairns. And my daughter by that stage was in amateurs because she was 15.
Yeah.
And so I had her staying with my sister, and my sister running her to and from in Cairns, and I was racing up the Gillies Range to Atherton each day. And then I thought, well, we should get all 6 coaches together, because there was 3 at each venue, and have dinner. And hopefully some of your listeners are familiar with the Yungaburra pub. Lake Eacham Hotel, it's just the most beautiful place. Massive, wide maple staircase and, fire, and it's the loveliest little town, Yungaburra. When I win lotto, I'm going to buy a B&B.
Nice.
I was just telling someone the other day even. So we got heaps of the families and the 6 coaches together and had dinner, and then the 3 Cairns coaches, they had a station wagon, and I had a little Gemini, so I said, okay, follow me down the range to get them back to Cairns after we had dinner. And and then I flicked them when they had to turn off, and they knew where they were. And several weeks later I got a letter from one of the coaches that did Cairns, and it was Peter Hannan. And he said, because then they continued on and did a coaching clinic in Ingham and then Townsville and then Mackay, and then flew back to Brisbane from there. They were all teachers in school holidays. And he sent me a letter and thanked me for looking after them and for organising the dinner, and went on to say that he thought the kids in Cairns were the most talented, and and that I'd created a little bit of angst in the vehicle that was following me down the gillies because I guess it was a range that I was fairly familiar with, and they certainly weren't, and they had a bigger car. So my little Gemini handled the corners real well, and there's 192 of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
and that was your first collision with Peter?
Yeah, he started writing to me.
Wow, writing letters back then. There was no SMS, I guess.
No.
That's and that was the start of and Peter, a highly credentialed level 5 successful coach as well. And I've read that you would say he's one of your greatest mentors throughout your career.
Certainly, absolutely. I wouldn't have been as confident, and I still wouldn't maintain that I'm an extremely, extremely confident coach. But he helped me in so many ways. He was doing his level 5. He was heavily involved with facilitators in that course from the AIS. He'd been down and done courses, and encouraged me to apply when I was still living in Cairns before we moved down to be with Pete. Encouraged me to apply to do my level 2, which is now considered the level 4. And I got accepted, and I came down for 2 weeks to do that course. And then ultimately my daughter and I moved down to be with Pete and got married, and we've been married 29 years.
Wow.
This year.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And then I got involved in coach education as well, and he was a secondary school teacher, so he used to sit in the back of the classroom and take little notes and give me lots of feedback. So I really, really valued that.
Yeah.
I think some people might get a little toey, a little bit touchy about that, but I really valued it, and it helped me a lot. And it helped me in my reading and my learning and my interest in pursuing my own coaching pathway then.
You said something then, Sharon, that I must go back to. You said, you wouldn't, even after all the success you've had and the successes you continue to have, you wouldn't classify yourself as a confident coach. What did you mean by that?
Confidence is many-faceted, I guess. I certainly absolutely know that I've got more to learn every day. I absolutely don't believe that I know everything. And you never can as a coach, because every single person standing in front of you is a whole new coaching world. You've got to find different cues. You've got to work with the bodies that they've got, work with the little niggles that they have, work with the mindsets. So the more you read, I like reading bios. The more you just understand people and understand how they approach situations and how they went about things. So I guess confidence is it's knowledge, it's familiarity, it's belief that you're doing the best you can for that particular athlete, and that's an ongoing process, always a work in progress. So
no, I think that's as you say, it's not that you're not confident, it's more that it's you're aware that there's always more to learn. I often say in my work, I've been a physio for 13 years, I'm a student every day. You're always learning, and I think the moment you feel like you have arrived and you've stopped learning, I think potentially is a warning sign.
Absolutely, and I'm coaching currently a girl who's doing really, really well, and to people on the outside it looks like she's just had a massive, incredible breakthrough, but that's been coming for a good 2 years, and I've been coaching her for 4 years, and she was already a grown up when she moved from New South Wales to train with me. And so processes. Process, and it's easy from the outside looking in, as you said, to equate a breakthrough with just that's just happened for them. They're gifted, they're naturally gifted, or it's just the right time. But I just returned last night on a plane from Africa, Ethiopia, watching how they train over there and working with one of the New Zealand athletes. And I thought how interesting the world looks at these runners and says they're so gifted, they're just such great runners, but they are working their tails off. There is always so much behind it, and that's been a life's work to get to that point. Yeah, certainly this girl works really hard. Sally worked really hard. They have to back themselves, and I think that's been a bit of a breakthrough with this current Australian athlete who may, in fact, qualify for the Olympics. That would be an ideal outcome. But she it's just like she's sort of thrown off the hackles of thinking that others are better than her and she's not as good as them, so she's not going to beat them. And suddenly she's just had a breakthrough training year. That's where the breakthrough has been. And she's just way more confident, really backing herself, has a far greater understanding of her own body and what's a good niggle, what's a bad niggle, what's good, what's not bad pain, what's really bad pain, all of those sort of things. And she's 25 soon. So. Yeah. And, there's that confidence word again. How do you as a coach instill, and I know there's no cookie cutter answer because every athlete in front of you is different and, as you say, needs different cues, but any practical examples in, say, this athlete's case of how you've been able to help instill some confidence? I think just keeping the eyes on the ball, because some of the athletes I've coached, they wander. You're trying to really work hard on a particular facet of technique and they get hung up on some other part of the technique that they think is annoying them, they can't get or whatever. But I know that we've got to fix other things first, which are causes, not symptoms. And, like if we can fix this part of the technique, then that's going to be easier to fix and that's going to be non-existent, and all these other things are going to start to fall into place, and then other things will be easier to fix. So I think she started realizing that what we were really working on was really coming together, and she's a prolific video taker and studies it. We talk about how often she looks at a video and it's definitely not in the 40s or more anymore, which is a good thing. She sees things, she understands positions, and she sees what's what's good and what's working, and doesn't get so hung up on the little idiosyncrasies. That might be her. There might be parts of her technique that we're not going to change. Yep. But it's her, and she's now got a body that can work at speed with these little minor defects.
So that's an example. Sharon, as you said, you've got to find ways to give them cues, to work with mindset, to help them understand and trust their bodies. It's a multifaceted project. Coach, I mean, what does that mean? It's such a big role, right? What does the word coach mean to you? In one sentence.
A massive investment, in a person. Yeah. The person standing in front of you. So it is emotional, it's artistic, it's scientific, it's motivational, it's multifaceted.
I like that. Emotional, scientific, artistic. That's a good description. Sharon, your professional career collided with a young, aspiring Gold Coast athlete. The world at that stage would soon know as Sally Pearson. And that coaching journey went from junior right through to the highest of highs with Olympic gold, World Championships, Commonwealth Games gold, and medals in between, of course. You mentioned the words emotional, artistic and scientific. That relationship for, I believe it was 80, what the years you coached Sally for?
14 and a half years.
14.5 years. So, the show's theme, the highs, lows and learnings. Let's jump straight to the high. What's the highlight of that 14 and a half year coaching career with Sally?
There's probably two equal highlights. I just can't really differentiate. And one was winning the World Championships in 2011 in Daegu in a championships record. That was really quite remarkable, and a breakout year that created a lot of angst going into 2012 because Sally became the pin-up girl of the Australian Olympic Committee and the Australian population's involvement in the Olympics and their hopes and wishes and their viewing pleasure. So the gold medal in London was more of a relief than anything else. I tell coaches when I'm at coaching courses or seminars or workshops or whatever to look at the footage from Daegu more than the footage from London, because in London after the heats she suffered quite intense back pain. She was in a real lot of trouble and couldn't warm up for the semi-finals and the finals. So if you look at the difference in the technique between Daegu final and Olympic final, it's quite pronounced that she wasn't getting into that pike position over the hurdle because she had a really, really sore back. She couldn't do any hurdle drills in the warm-up. She was barely even able to jog. She was hell-bent on not letting her competitors see or know that she was in trouble. Because she just wanted to go out there as fierce as ever and, race to her potential. So the physio was sort of sitting around behind this small spectator stand along the warm-up track, and she'd do in maybe 30 metres jog, come back, go around, get some treatment, come back, another little jog, back behind the stands, get some treatment. So she just wasn't physically in a really good position, even though she ran an Olympic Games record as well. So it was a pretty impressive day. So they were real highlights for two completely different reasons. But the most exciting highlight was silver medal in Beijing that was, Sol was definitely an unknown. From that day forward, everyone knew she was just an outstanding competitor.
Yeah.
But no one thought that she was going to make a final. That was the goal. Sol and I both absolutely were trying to do everything we could to make a final. And then, so she was way more distressed during the semi-final period, which is extremely common.
Yep.
And then for the final, I remember walking into the call room, and the last thing I said to her was, "No guts, no glory, so I'll just go for it." And she went out there, and one of her arch rivals couldn't believe that Sol was sort of so close to her, and for whatever reason, whether she lost concentration or whatever, but she hit a hurdle, and Sol went flying through. But between second place and sixth place, so second, third, fourth, fifth and sixth, 5 girls crossed that line within 0.02 of a second of each other.
In the final.
In the final.
In the
Olympic final.
And Sally obviously picked up that silver medal and won the hearts of Australia with her post-race excitement and just raw.
Did you see me?
Raw interview. And I'd have to go back and view that again. Where were you positioned? Were you?
Well, I was a personal coach, so Pete and I had to buy tickets and fly ourselves over and find accommodation. I was in row 652 in the right up, probably only about 5 rows from the very, very top, in the middle of the back straight.
Oh, wow. And
so a long way away.
They didn't put the cameras on you?
Oh, no. They would never have found me.
You.
I had no accreditation. Okay. She wasn't expected, to win. Yeah. It was quite remarkable, but somehow I got myself into the bowels of the stadium where post-event control is, and then once I got in, I got her mum and her mum's friend in, and
wow.
We were all in there.
And then fast forward another Olympic cycle, and you're no longer in row 650.
Team coach.
Yeah, you were a team accredited team coach. But as you say, there was an expectation come 2012. She just won the World Championships. And, there's some great highs. And obviously, with all the highs, there's lows. You guys worked through injuries together. Was there ever a point where you didn't think Sally was going to pull through?
Oh, no. Berlin World Champs were in 2009. She had quite a severe back issue 3 weeks out. She ended up on the gym floor at Deutsche Sports School, which was a university at Cologne, where the team was based, and they had to get the doc to come from the accommodation to the university and treat her, and that was pretty bad. She was in a fairly bad way, and even to the point where we were going on 2 buses from Cologne to Berlin, the team, and they had to make arrangements for her to be able to stand up on the bus to get there. And they looked at other options, whether they should fly or catch a train or whatever. They being the Australian team, and we got her into Berlin, and they kept working with her, and we got her on the track, and she made the final again. So that was a good performance, but just a really tough couple of weeks.
Yeah,
really tough. Daegu was a little bit tough as well. Another small back injury. I remember what was it, about 4 days out or 3 days out, I put her on the track and said she was doing block starts. She'd been desperate for a few days, and I managed to hold her out, and the high performance manager of Athletics Australia, he was not happy. He was pretty cranky with me, and I I said she needs to do it for her own head. She needs to know she can come out of blocks and go over a hurdle before she lines up on the start line in the stadium. And so she did that, and the rest is history.
You're listening to Sharon Hannan, Australian Athletics acclaimed coach and former coach of Sally Pearson, Commonwealth, World and Olympic gold medalist. Support for today's show comes from PhysioCrem. PhysioCrem is a topical massage cream containing natural plant-based ingredients, ideal for the temporary relief of muscular aches and pains. If you're conscious of what you put on your body, you'll be happy to know that PhysioCrem does not contain parabens or hydroxybenzoates, and its non-greasy formula doesn't leave any sticky residue behind. PhysioCrem can be found Australia-wide at your local Coles, chemist or health store, as well as via their online shop. They've offered listeners of the show 20% off the entire range available over on their website. Use the coupon code POGO, P-O-G-O, when you shop at physiocrem.com.au. That's physiocrem.com.au. Herding Sachs and PhysioCrem have got your back. Support for today's show also comes from Pogo Physio. We exist to simply help you get back to your physical best following injury. And our philosophy is very simple. We do not wish to see you for a single session more than what you require. We just want to see you get back to your best, completing rehabilitation and crossing your physio finish line. To find out more about Pogo Physio's award-winning services, including our 1-hour initial appointments or our very popular online telehealth physiotherapy consultation services, jump over to pogophysio.com.au. For now, let's jump back on this Coach's Corner episode with Australian Athletics coach Sharon Hannan. In preparing for today, Sharon, I read that we come back to the C word, the confidence word, that one of the things that you worked on a lot with Sally over the career was instilling confidence, which from the outside looking in, anyone would just assume that an Olympic champion, a world champion in any sport is naturally confident. So I was really interested in what I read there about that. Can you speak to that at all, instilling confidence in an athlete like Sally?
I don't know that I actually instilled confidence. Again, it's multifaceted, isn't it? Confidence. But, you have little markers and you say, you're doing this time in this rep and you're doing that time, and, so everything's on the right track and it's getting better. So you can only give them that sort of information to feed back to them, and then they need to take the confidence from that. So instill, you can't give it to them. You can't put it in a bottle and say, take this.
Yeah.
But you can show them what's working and what's working really well and where things are headed, and they take from that what they will. And she took a lot of confidence, and she was a fairly fierce competitor. But I think there's two other C words which really contributed immensely to her career, and that was commitment and consistency.
And we didn't set this up either, Sharon. We didn't set up these C words. This is commitment and consistency. So commitment, can you give any practical examples around commitment?
Well, Sally committed to athletics. She committed to her sport, and she committed to being the best that she could be from really quite a young age. She, her Year 12 formal, it had to work around her training. She never wanted to move training sessions, change times, change days, change anything. She just wanted to do exactly what was routine and what was set out for her to do, and do things on the days that she was meant to. And if I changed the program for any reason, like coming into a competition might be on a Saturday, so I'd move the Thursday session, like if it was a major competition, and you'd have to sit down and give her almost an essay as to why you do that, just so that she could feel confident in why things were changing, because routine was really important to her. Commitment was just always there. Like athletics was before everything else. And in all the years, I have to say that she very rarely ever missed a session.
Yeah.
Ever.
So there's that consistency. I mean, it's practical as example as you can get. Were there times when you had to say, no, you need to rest, have a day off, or it just never happened?
Oh yeah, it did, and she was fine so long as that's what I thought was the best plan of action. Yeah.
Sharon, I often reflect and find it interesting that, you know, when the world sees peak performance in any field, be it athletics, be it any endeavour in life, peak performance, a world champion, Olympic champion, that there's almost an expectation that it's come out of normal thinking or normal way of behaving. But it's a simple equation in my mind. If you want outstanding peak performance, you're going to have someone that has to think differently, see the world differently, process differently. They've just naturally got to be different in a way. What do you think was, on Sally, for a little bit more here, what was her greatest attribute? You've used the word fierce a few times.
Fierce competitor, so there's another word. She was competitive, so once she was on the start line, she backed herself. But I just think that she wanted to be an athlete, whether that was a gymnast. So from a very young age, she was in an elite gymnastics program, and then moved to the Gold Coast, discovered little athletics, and she just wanted to be the best. All through school, she'd be asked to play soccer, to do other things, chose to do a dance subject because she didn't like school subjects all that much, and this broke up her days. But she never paid much attention to even the physical subjects because she just wanted to do athletics. She just wanted to do, to be very, very good at something. And history will show that in 2007, when she was 20 years old, turning 21, we went to the World Championships in Osaka in Japan, and she did the 100 hurdles and the 4x1 relay, and she qualified for the 200. We had not made a decision at that stage in 2007 of what her preferred event was. So she ran 11:14 that year.
Wow.
And the Australian record only went down a couple of years ago to 11:12. Maybe you better edit my voice into there when you find out. Yeah, and I remember my daughter ringing me, like I was in Osaka as a personal coach again, and she rang me in tears, and she's saying, "Mum, you've got no idea what they're saying about you on the TV. I can't believe it." And she was really upset. I said, "What are they saying?" And she said, "Oh, they're saying that they think this young athlete's getting really bad advice. She's in too many events, blah, 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 blah." But, and I can understand people saying that, but she was a 20-year-old with a future ahead of her, and we just didn't know what path that future was going to go on, until after that. And she made the semi-final of the 100 and the hurdles.
And so two things pop up there, Sharon. How did you handle that criticism? Did you just wash it off because it was uninformed and ignorance, or did it get to you a little bit?
Uninformed and emotional and family.
Yeah.
Ignorance of that sort of thing. And, so I calmed my daughter down. And it didn't bother me because I just knew that we hadn't made any decisions yet. But I could absolutely understand that coming from a commentator who was a really highly regarded athlete in Australia, because they just didn't know this person called Sally Pearson well enough yet.
And how did you then channel to focus on the hurdles?
It came down to numbers. Sat down and worked out where she was ranked in the world, and she was ranked 22nd, I think. These numbers could be wrong. I have a terrible memory. I think she was ranked 22nd in the world in hurdles, and like in the 40s in the 100, and even way further down in the 200. So she made the decision. Sally made the decision. So
and never looked back.
Focus on hurdles, yeah.
And never looked back. But the decision was made around at that point in time, where am I in the world rankings? I'm the lowest there, that's the one I should pursue.
Yeah, and I understand I can't keep doing all those events. I need to make decisions.
And history does show that it was a wise decision.
Very wise. Although, having said that, I've said publicly before that there was a few years where I was really hopeful that during the European campaign she could run 100 metres and I think only once did she ever, and it was pouring rain and wasn't that good. But I absolutely believe that she could run sub 11, which is just incredible for an Aussie.
Wow, sub 11, mind-boggling. And it's interesting, just returning from Ethiopia with one of the New Zealand athletes, Zane Robertson, talking to him about his personal bests. I think it's easy to look at paper and say, well, that's the best that athlete had. But often it's far removed from the reality of their potential that they could have run if they had an event at the right time in the right manner. Could you speak to that as a coach?
Absolutely. All through Sol's career, when we went to what's now called a track classic, and back then were called Grand Prix, she would run at least 2 races, and if they put on a relay, she'd do a relay as well. So we'd just look at the timetable, and she'd run a 1 and a hurdles or a 2 and a hurdles. It was pretty much always hurdles right back from the beginning, and a relay if there was one on. And I know there was one Grand Prix where she ran the 1, the 2 and the hurdles. And even when she went to World Youth Championships in 2003, and she was only 16 at that championships, she qualified for the 1, the 2 and the hurdles, and 4x1. But we looked at the timetable, and the 100 final was about 40 minutes before the hurdles final, and I thought if she ran really well in that 100 final and she medalled, she would kill herself 40 minutes later going over hurdles because just imagine that sort of elation and excitement and mind-blowing result. And so the 200 final was 45 minutes after the hurdles final, and so we focused on the 200 and the hurdles.
And how'd that one play out?
Well, she won the hurdles, yep, and she went in ranked number 1 in the world based on the season, and she maintained and won it. So I wasn't there, I couldn't afford to go. So that was an extremely good outcome. She was ranked 5th after the semi-final of the 200, and she came 5th with not quite as good a time. She ran a better time in the semi-final, which was a PB. Yeah. She's always PB'd at the majors, which is really remarkable in itself.
It's a unique athlete that can show up at the right time with the right result, isn't it?
And good programming.
And yeah. I mean, programming, you mean as in coaching to get there, or you mean programming of the actual meet? Both.
No, getting everything right.
Yeah.
So that she was at her best at the right time.
Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah, it doesn't just happen, does it? But then you would have seen equally athletes that have prepared well that just come the day that it matters, they just can't pull it together.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of instances around the world where athletes will do massive PBs, a week, 10 days, 2 weeks after an Olympics or a World Championships. So getting that taper right, getting everything right in the lead up, so that on the day they're on.
What are your top 3 tips for having an athlete be ready on the day? I know it's a generic question, and it's always
know the athlete.
Know the athlete. One. What would be the second one? Know
everything else that's gone into it, and just keep checking your program, and just keep counting backwards. And is this going to work? Why is she going to be at her best on this day? In Daegu at that World Championships, she did an amazing PB in the semi-final, and at the majors for the women, the semi-finals and the finals are usually 1 hour 40 to max 2 hours apart, and the heats are the day before. So getting those 3 races in that 24 hours right is a big job. Lots of brain power.
And as you say, reverse engineering, constantly questioning where it fits in to the bigger purpose, the end goal. What are some of your, what would you share with listeners of the show, Sharon, around recovery strategies? I know it's a very open question, but what do you think is really important on the recovery aspect?
Definitely like ice baths and therapy. So for much of Sol's career, she was lucky enough to have a really good physio, who Britt Kaling.
Yep.
Who looked after her, and she had therapy once a week, every week. And Sol had what I call dicky feet, and that's something that Britt looked after every single week.
Yep.
Manipulated the feet and made sure that they were perfect. Perfect's a terrible word. Made sure that they were in good shape so that she could handle the impacts of the training for an event called hurdles. And I think she would be in bed 8:30, 9. She liked getting asleep, and she was really diligent about that.
Yeah.
She gave up a lot of social activities because she was just hell-bent on wanting to be the very best in the world.
So sleep therapies
underrated. It needs to be way more high on the priority list.
And it's free and it's readily available. Zane Robertson said something interesting. He has a good hour or 2 every day of sleep, and he said that people often mistake watching TV as resting, but as he said, the body knows the difference between watching TV and sleeping. I thought that was really quite profound.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a distance running thing too, because they train twice a day.
Yeah.
And they're doing a lot of mileage. So I don't know that speed athletes need a nap, but some days they do.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's an everyday thing. But definitely, I'm talking to the kids that I coach at the moment all the time about getting sleep, and they just completely devalue the importance of it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's frustrating.
It's frustrating. What frustrates you about it? Do you know how important it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Social media is just changing this world, and athletes who don't have access to it are going to be world beaters just because everyone else is onto it. It's too much time. I'm calling out to them all the time, posture, head up, because they spend all this time with their neck hanging down, and it's just dreadful. And then their posture starts to be affected in really powerful ways and not good.
Now it's 2020 and we are thrilled to be bringing the first physical performance show live event to you. On July the 18th, 2020, we are bringing the most downloaded guest of the show in the history of the show to the Gold Coast, Australia, Dr. Stephen Seiler, acclaimed sports scientist, father of polarized training, otherwise known as 80-20 training. Dr. Seiler will be conducting a one-day live workshop from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. titled Sustainable Training for Attainable Endurance Goals. Intensity distribution, interval training, periodization, and monitoring. The day will include 4 sessions as well as a question and answer session. At the time of recording, there are circa 70 tickets left from the 100 available. Tickets are readily available for the Dr. Seiler live workshop over at pogophysio.com.au/Dr. Dr. Seiler, Seiler. You'll also find the event over on Facebook for Pogo Physio and the Physical Performance Show, or just search for Dr. Seiler Pogo Physio. This event is ideal for endurance athletes, cyclists, distance runners, marathoners, trail runners, ultra runners, triathletes, rowers and swimmers. It's ideal for coaches of juniors through to elite athletes, sports enthusiasts, students of the health sciences and sports sciences, and of course fitness and health professionals. We look forward to hosting you come July 2020 with the Dr. Stephen Seiler live one-day workshop. Sharon, relationships, they're emotional. Something I often look at without envy for coaches is, when athletes, as happens so often, it's rare for an athlete to be with a coach right through a career, but how do you as a coach deal with transitions of athletes? Some will join you. I know there's an international athlete that's recently joined you looking at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. So it's no different to any profession. People will come, people will go. But how do you as a coach, it's such an emotional role, it must be a little bit like family members separating. It must be incredibly difficult at times.
It always is. We just had a young fellow leave our squad last week, and it's just it hurts. You put so much time into them, and you explain why you're doing things or why you're not doing things, and sometimes time isn't on your side. So we've lost a good young athlete that we've coached for 4 years. So that it's not easy. As a lot of time, it's to do with patience. Some athletes want it now, and will ignore advice based on their perception of their timeline, and you can't do much about that.
It sounds a bit like physiotherapy. Sometimes timelines are required, and you just can't cookie cram it or cram the process. It's something that takes time often. But I think you'd be not human if you didn't feel those transitions. But it's certainly something I think coaching is one of those really invested relationships where it's heart and soul, and it's not just on a clock. It's a round timetable.
Yeah, we've actually had parents come to us and talk to us about some behaviours that they're not happy about their kids, and can we weave it into conversations because the kids listen to us. So there's kind of pluses and minuses. Some kids just hang off your absolute every word, and some kids get to a stage where they think they know better, and they'll move on. So that's the cycle of life.
Yeah, cycle of life. Sharon, you said you're a lifelong learner. You've never stopped learning. Who are some coaches that have influenced you? Obviously, your husband, has been such a big influence, but outside of Peter's role, even outside of athletics, are there any coaches that you've looked to for inspiration?
Probably every coach that I've ever met. Coaches from other sport, coaches who I've read their bios, Wayne Bennett, Rick Charlesworth, coaches in other event areas within athletics. There's just so many. You're talking to them and you're asking them questions. Roy Boyd is considered the grandfather of hurdles in Australia, and he had me in tears last week when Liz ran 12:94, and which was the fourth fastest time ever by an Australian, and he just sent me such a lovely message. And I took athletes down to him and spent a week at a time with him, back many years ago, and he's really quite elderly now, but I still would value his advice. There's so many people.
What do you think is the top attribute for a coach? one top attribute, what would it be? It's a hard question.
Probably the same as what I'm asking of from kids is patience.
Patience. So patience. And then I was going to ask you, what's the top attribute for an athlete? Patience.
Yeah, just patience has become more important in the last decade or so because the world is becoming more of a now world. You know, athletes can get their, entertainment now. They can get their answers now. They can Google now. They can get everything now. It's a now world. But I live in a doing world, and you've just got to take the time. Like, you had to crawl before you could walk. We got a puppy last year, and we've just got another little one just in the last couple of days, and just watching the 7-month-old teach the 9-week-old how to play with a ball and how to pull on a sock and stuff. It's incredible. They don't know the social media, the now world. They know what they need to do to be the little animal that they are.
So that patience and the foresight. I remember hearing Ryan Gregson say, every session's just a building block, but every session is a building block.
Nick Bedeau, who coaches Ryan and Jen, he talks all the time about money in the bank. It's money in the bank. Every session's money in the bank. Yeah, it's
a process, isn't it? So, Sharon, every guest of the show issues listeners with a physical challenge for the week. What is Sharon Hannan's physical challenge going to be?
Okay, I know your background is in distance, so I'm going to throw it out there to the distance world. I challenge you to, in each kilometre of your run, in just one session, try it, do 4 light poles to light poles of sprints.
So within
fast as you possibly can.
On the track, or this is on the road?
Either. Well, if it's on the track, then about 60, 70 metres, just absolute all-out sprint, and then straight back into their running pace.
And if it's out, you can do light poles, as you say. All right, so we'll call this the Sharon Hannan Light Pole Challenge. I like it. Sharon, this is an incredibly difficult question, but if you could boil everything you've learnt through your coaching professional career to date, noting that there's always more to learn and that's the journey you're still on, but if you could boil it down to one piece of advice to help listeners of this show perform at their best across any endeavour, what would Sharon Hannan's one piece of advice be?
Oh, goodness. Invest in yourself. Invest your time, invest your commitment, invest your sleep, invest your money. Invest in your own confidence. Find something in every session that you can take away as a positive. Invest in yourself.
That is brilliant. Sharon Hannan, it's been worth the wait. Thank you for sharing some of the many learnings you've accrued through the years, and a big year coming up. Obviously, you're looking at getting athletes to Tokyo 2020.
Hopefully two
athletes to Tokyo 2020. So all the best for this Olympic year.
Appreciate it, Brad. Thanks.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show, and I trust and I know you enjoyed Sharon's share-ins. If you did, then reach out and let Sharon know. You'll find Sharon readily over at sportscredentials.com.au, all one word, lowercase. You'll also find Sharon over on Instagram and Facebook. If you have a question for Sharon that you would like answered, feel free to send it through b.beer@pogophysio.com.au or across on any of the socials at Brad_Beer, Instagram and Twitter, and we will get that answered for you and post it live on the Facebook group, The Physical Performance Show. Massive thanks to those who are rating and reviewing the show and also hitting subscribe. Subscribing is actually the best way to help the Physical Performance Show grow, and we are fast closing in on our first 1 million iTunes downloads. So thank you for sharing the episodes, sharing the show, and tuning in. Thank you also for the podsies. They are always so much fun. That's a screenshot of the episode that you're enjoying and tagging in the show at Physical Performance Show and letting us know what it is that you're up to whilst you enjoy an episode. Now, while we're on reviews, a massive thanks to Tim Richards for his review. Tim is a long-term listener of the show and each year oversees one of Australia's most loved and respected distance triathlons, none other than the Hell of the West, held in Gundawindi in February. Tim commented, "I've been listening to the show from early days. After reading Brad's book and witnessing the great work Pogo Physio do, it's no wonder these are great podcasts, as Brad leaves no stone unturned and has a unique way of relating to his guests, which help open them up and release so much information, fun and stories. Love the mix between the experts and performer editions, but definitely my favourites are the old school triathletes and marathoners, Brad Bevan, Macca, Mona and Deke. Just love the old training and racing stories. Would love to hear from some more top-line coaches, Brett Sutton, Nick Badeau. Keep them coming." Tim, we certainly have more in store, including some legendary triathletes, as you refer to, and of course some further coaches' corners coming your way. Thank you for your support. If you'd like to leave a review of the show, it's simple. Jump over to iTunes, wherever it is that you enjoy your show from, and review and rate away. Massive thanks, as always, to the very good folk who make this show possible. Daryl Misson, our audio engineer, Susan Wilkin on all things show administration, and Matthew Walding on all things graphic design. Of course, another huge thank you to today's show sponsor, PhysioCrem. Your support makes this show possible. And don't forget to jump over and enjoy the terrific product that PhysioCrem produce over at physiocrem.com.au. It is the cream of choice at Pogo Physio. Now, coming up on next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, we jump over with some return guests, acclaimed sports podiatrists, Simon Bartold and Paul Griffin of Bartold Clinical, and we explore all things running shoes with carbon plates. My goodness, what a topic it has been in recent times, with Eliud Kipchoge's historic sub-2-hour marathon in the Nike Alpha Flies, and hot off the back of that, World Athletics rulings around carbon-plated shoes, and of course the explosion onto the market of other brands outside of Nike with their versions of carbon-plated shoes. Now, next week, we'll discuss the ins and outs, the technology, the benefits, and the future of these shoes. The following week, we'll be featuring Australian runner, Melbourne Track Club athlete, who our previous featured performers, Stuart McSwain and Jack Rayner, have both cited as the athlete that they most admire, who recently broke the Australian half marathon record, running a blistering 59:57 at the Marugame Half Marathon in Japan. So we'll hear from Brett Robertson on his career highs, lows, and learnings, following the expert edition deep dive on all things carbon-plated shoes. So until then, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.